some breaking news in college football, Ken. A statement from the University of Michigan, and a bunch of college football reporters have all tweeted this out in the last 30 seconds or so. I'll read it. No matter if I have to. This morning, the university coach Harbaugh and the Big Ten resolved their pending litigation. The conference agreed to close its investigation, and the university and Coach Harbaugh agreed to accept the 3-game suspension. Blah, 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 blah. All right, so Harbaugh has accepted the suspension, so he will officially miss the games against Maryland and the finale against Ohio State in the regular season. Basically being like, hey, I'm going to go away here. Just, stop investigating our cheating, please. Which I think is pretty funny. So so we're done with this for now. This is like the NFL has destroyed the Spygate tapes. Now everybody moves on. If you have a betting thought on it, we'd love to hear it, but it's figured, that's pretty big breaking news we wanted to get into the show.
Yeah, so, he'll miss this game, which I guess is kind of like a trap game if you were going to look at it that way. This, sandwich spot, Penn State and Ohio State, but no, really. And Maryland's like a funny team. They've had a terrible season, but their upside is really good. So maybe they can kind of keep it close, but I wouldn't get my hopes up, I guess I would say. And so a big point spread, Michigan's like a little less than 3 touchdowns right now. Does it affect them in the Ohio State game? I mean, he gets to coach them during the week. He just can't be on the side. I mean, they host the game. They're not going to they should just build a tool shed right next to the stadium, and he gets to sit in it with the video feeds and the audio head, so he just can't be in the stadium. I'm sure they'll figure something out. And then he comes back for the Big Ten title game, and which honestly, that's the one he wouldn't even need to coach. They're just going to win that one easily anyway. And so no, I don't think there's a net betting impact. Maybe the Ohio State market behaves a little funny as a result of this, but I'm going to like Michigan in that game. I don't think Ohio State's going to be able to score at all. Sort of like Penn State, because, both those teams have the same problem. One has Marvin Harrison Jr. and one doesn't. That's the only difference. I guess that's a pretty big difference anyway. I still think they're the most likely team to win. They don't have to win. Georgia can win. Someone else can win. That's basically it, and doesn't impact McCarthy got taken out of the Heisman race because he didn't pass the ball in the second half against Penn State, so he's out of that discussion anyway. So there's not even an application there. This all feels like nothing, and then after the season's over, so assuming the NCAA delivers their infraction warning or whatever to Michigan sometime in the next couple months, then in the off season, this is when all the NCAA penalties will come down, and okay, Harbaugh's suspended for these games. Also, it'll be way more, and it'll be way worse, and they'll take away a bunch of stuff, and they might take away the title if they end up winning it this year. The good news is if you bet it, this is like Medina Spirit at the Kentucky Derby. Hey, I bet on a horse, and the horse was cheating. What happens? You still get to keep your money. You don't have to give the money back to the race book. It's whatever happens when the race happens. So Michigan beats whoever and wins the national title. Your money is safe. Cash those tickets, and you never have to give the money back.
Yeah, Michigan wins the national championship, and Bob Baffert doesn't get to go back to Churchill Downs. So Harbaugh's not going to coach the final 2 games of the regular season, a couple weeks against Ohio State, coming up now against Maryland. Does that kind of change the way you view Michigan in these next 2 games coming up? About 3-touchdown favorite against Maryland. The look ahead has Michigan about a 6-point favorite against Ohio State. Do you ding Michigan at all, not having Jim Harbaugh on the sideline for either of those games? How do you view Michigan coming up here without their head coach on the sideline?
I'm surprised if he accepted the suspension of the Ohio State game. That tells me that the evidence was probably pretty strong and that they felt the fight wasn't worth it at the end of the day. But I think this is a really, really good Michigan team. And if we can, ignore the noise off the field and just focus on how that team plays and what it looks like, I think they should be favored against the Michigan team. I'm just a little surprised that Harbaugh, having known Jim for decades and how he feels about that game, I'm surprised that he would agree to step aside from being on the sideline for that game. That part of it surprises me. So, I think this is a really, really good Michigan team. We'll have to see if Ohio State, for a change, can show that they can change the tide and that they're physical enough to stand up to a Michigan team that ran the ball 32 straight times in the second half against a really good Penn State defense. That was a pretty significant statement.
There is not a vulnerable favorite here. So, it's not that Dan Campbell's gonna win. That's not what I'm saying. We get to the end of the year and he doesn't win. Don't be like, Ken, you said he would win. I think there's still a few other coaches who could definitely win this award, and the Lions could lose a bunch of games. Just if we're trying to project forward and we're trying to go with likely records, likely narratives, and combine those two, and that's how voters are going to vote for this award. And then we also have all the midseason content that was produced about how we feel about coaches, where they are right now. The Campbell is this airtight, ironclad case. They're going to win the division for the first time in forever. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to win 13 games on average. Like that's a 4-game improvement over last year. 4 is kind of the magic number for winning this award. They won 9 last year. If he gets to 13, this is a really tough case to go to try to pick somebody else. It's really unlikely that that's going to happen. So in the next, like in an hour from now, when we do this again, it can be like, this is how I'm going to phrase it. If Dan Campbell goes 12-5, who wins? Like that's because that's how this happens. If you're telling me he's 13-4, 14-3, I think they have 2 losses right now. 15-2 is not going to happen, but like 13-4, 14-3. If you tell me those are the 2 records, I'm not interested. Like, I don't think there's a discussion. That's my opinion. This is a really subjective conversation. I think 14-3, he's got it no matter what. I think 13-4, he's probably got it no matter what. 12-5 is a 3-game improvement. I think you start to have a nuanced conversation about what other narratives coaches are out there that have done really cool stuff. But like, everyone's already you read all the stuff midseason, everyone's lining up behind this. Winning the division for the first, like, this completes kind of like the couple year like quest that he's been on to restore the Lions, restore the Roar, all this stuff. You can be like, well, that's all like cliche garbage. Welcome to awards voting. Welcome to how this stuff works. This is really easy for everybody to understand. If they win 13, I think it's a wrap. I really do. And that's just in my opinion. So like, in order to bet this and feel like you're making good bets, you kind of have to think they're going to go 12-5. Like, to me, to make the bets in the market. So yeah, like, there are other interesting candidates. The prices on a lot of these guys, I think, are going to move around really rapidly in the next few weeks. They're going to I think there's a lot of reshuffling that could potentially happen. But if you like O'Connell, or you like Sean Payton, who I bet like 190-1 a couple weeks ago, if you like Ryans, if you like McDaniel, like any of these guys, Mike Tomlin even, it's like, all right, if they do this and Dan Campbell's 13-4, do I think they win? I don't think they do. So we'll do the rest of the conversation later. Just to do it, because like this guy can win. If Sirianni runs the table, he's going to win. Like, he's going to win. They have 1 loss. He's going to win. So this is why John Harbaugh got a ton of buzz a couple weeks ago, and in the midseason content, because they only lost a couple games. Now they lose, and it's like you actually have like a 0% chance of winning, even with 3 losses. If they go through this schedule and they just beat everybody, he wins. Here's the problem. The price for him to win Coach of the Year is like 15, 18, 20-1. If you think that's going to happen, just bet him in all the games. Like, it's really straight. And again, get the money. Like, why not just get the money and not have to wait till February for Dan Campbell to win? Like, why? Like, just, if you like the team, play on them. Like, that's the problem with all these Coach of the Year guys. The margin for error is so small, and Campbell's so good. Just play on. But it's just worth noting again, if you want to bet in this market this week, yeah, Campbell's 7.5 at home against Justin Fields. Where's his price going? Like, I love Kevin O'Connell. I like the Vikings. They're dog this week.
So, Turn, what is your favorite play on Sunday? Could be a side, could be a total.
Going with Browns, we'll call it -1 right now, I think is a fair number. To me, that number has just been adjusted way too far. It was, in my opinion, a bit of a middling number. There was some expectation that Watson was hurt coming out of that game when it opened at 4. I think if Watson was in, that was probably going to be like 5.5. We now see him out. And I mean, this is all the way down to -1. We've seen Watson miss a couple games earlier this season when there was no expectation of a backup needing to start. We had some like surprised Watson ruling out. And against like great opponents like Baltimore, that game moved from Cleveland -2 to Baltimore +1. And so, like, I get that DTR from the preseason hype coming into that first start unannounced with no time to prep, he looked terrible. And we often see these preseason stars look really bad and are very overrated in their first start. But to me, the market's now saying, like, okay, that's very true. It is a drop-off. But we're now into just a massive drop-off territory here from Watson, who wasn't performing great to begin with. So, to me, the Browns' defense, the best unit on the field, matched up against the Steelers' offense. I just don't see a path for Pittsburgh to score much. I'll take the Browns at home here, -1.